how we fund our schools, how we allocate state aid. We saw these caps on the increases and decreases, moving away from the census-based approach of funding special education, multi-year averages for income and property values when it came to calculating local fair share. And then there was some flexibility around the property tax levy cap. Being as specific as possible, do you think that these are the changes that we should codify permanently into state law, or do you have any other thoughts on how we want to modernize the school funding formula? And then part B to that question, should we get that done now during the current legislature, or should that be something that we put at the feet of the next governor? And I'll let anybody take a stab at that.
All right.
Oh, all right.
The property tax cap flexibility, which I know a number of you take advantage of, it's really ironic that we used funds from the income tax that's supposed to cut property taxes to incentivize districts to raise property taxes above the existing cap. Now I know you've got challenges, but that was the wrong way to go about it. Had we fixed our school funding formula, you would not have been faced with those challenges. Again, there's a lot of money in the pot, over $4 billion in increased aid in the past 8 years. But out of 600 districts, 10 districts got over 1.7 billion of that, almost half. It was a great opportunity to fix an unfair formula, and we blew it. So the fact that we needed to have, and you still need to have, or you're still clamoring for, property tax cap flexibility could have been almost erased for most of you had we fixed the school funding formula, without, by the way, seriously damaging the school districts that legitimately were due more money. John, what was the other part of your question?
Just in terms of whether or not you think some of those changes, like multi-year averages, moving away from census-based, or even having some guardrails around the increases.
Well, okay, so you're right. We clamored for years, and I don't know how many of you were affected by S2, but many districts were dramatically affected. Over half our districts didn't keep up with inflationary increases as far as the value of their state aid goes. So we pushed for years to at least provide some relief in the rate of cut that happened to S2 districts that were losing money. Totally ignored by my good friends on the other side of the aisle. I said it with sincerity, and the governor. Yet when it came time,
But we budgeted for bridges in those years, also during the budget.
but how much of the hole did we really fill? We still have desperate school districts, so it was not enough. Had we had a floor, had we had a limit, a cap on the rate of cut, and made it out over years, failing, by the way, to fix it completely with redoing the school funding formula, it would have eased the burden on those districts dramatically. We didn't do that. We said screw them. But then when it came time for those same districts last year to get increases in their aid, suddenly the governor had a holier-than-thou moment. Now, the administration had told us, we have to follow the school funding formula. There is no way around it. Last year, when it came time for those districts to get increases, all of a sudden it was, yeah, we're gonna modify the formula and cap the rate of increase that you're due. It was outrageous, it was offensive, and it really, probably a third of the school districts in the state were significantly impacted by that. And the taxpayers that the governor said were gonna be served by his fully funding the formula, and the kids' education that he said was gonna be enhanced. All screwed. Horrific and awful policy.
I appreciate that. And I believe the legislature needs to have a role in this. They did kind of make a little bit of an end run around the legislative process rather than going through updating the statute. The second part of the question, and I do want to hear your thoughts on school funding, Senator, but also whether or not this is something you see the legislature taking on in lame duck or waiting until the next governor.
This should wait. Quite frankly, at this point, we should wait to have no matter which person wins. The time for this administration to continue to inflict its incompetence upon us is over. It's time for a new governor, no matter which one wins.
Anybody want to follow that up?
Yeah, I'll follow it. So I will agree with. Get ready. I I will agree with Senator O'Scanlan on the arbitrary floor and caps this past year, because it did impact so many districts that for far too long who were seeing the short end of the stick over and over and over and over and over again were some of the same districts that got capped and didn't, budgeted for what they thought they were going to receive. I'm sure like some of your districts did, and then had a shortfall. So first of all, we're tired, and I know this, it's like I repeat the same thing over and over again. The budgeting process for schools is doesn't make any sense at the state, right? You all know that better than us. We have got to figure out a way to do budget forecasting, and I know that gets very difficult and it tie bars the administration to certain numbers, but that's the only way that you all have better freedom and flexibility to figure out what exactly is going to happen in your school districts and what you need to do. Should we have conversations about transportation? Absolutely. Something that is impacting all of you, all of your districts, and bleeding down those line items in the budget. Should we talk about extraordinary special education aid? Absolutely. Should we talk about the real estate market in certain circumstances where it has swung and through the funding formula out of whack? Absolutely. Should we redo the whole entire school funding formula? Absolutely not. Okay, so I will tell you this, that districts who have been notified and told, it's always, I've supported all of the efforts in the budget process to bridge the gaps when districts have had shortfalls, because I don't ever want to see one child suffer because of lack of common sense approach budgeting at the state level. For years, I begged for money for districts that had been short-sighted and getting increases of 1,000 students year over year over year over year. Sometimes though, that's not reciprocated. And so we do need an infrastructure plan in there that makes sure that it observes the needs of all districts, that we fix the spaces that are creating kind of these, really extraordinary shifts where you think you're gonna, I use small numbers because I'm bad with math, where you think you're gonna get $10 and then you're only getting $3. That should not be the case whatsoever. We should be on a budget school forecast. That I have always firmly believed in this. I know this administration didn't love the concept of it because otherwise the legislature is cut out of the whole budget process. By the time we get the Department of Education to come before us, if there's a space where we say, hey, did you look at this? That was a place to save money. It's way too late,
Sure.
right? The point is gone. So are there spaces for us to have broader conversations where we need to keep up with the cost of living? Absolutely. Do we need to recognize that for far too long, there were districts that were suffering in perpetuity for 50 years plus before the school funding formula started upticking to get fully funded?
Appreciate that, and I think we agree. The planning and predictability side of it is probably just as important as the overall dollar amount itself. Madam Chair.
I would just add the regionalization of schools we cannot leapfrog or skip over. I know it came to my attention, I'm not a big sports fan, but my chief of staff is. And when we began to look at how school districts were shifting, and I asked the question, what is this? We're going from these different titles, different school districts, and he said, oh, the population size is going down. And I said, what? He said, well, yes, they're grouped by their size. And so I think there is this emphasis where we talk about census or actual. This is where we need to look at. In Hunterdon County, we have a great regional school system. I have 5 up in there, and they do a great job. There was a poll recently that said that residents would they would accept a magnet school, and they would be acceptable to that. I think we have to continue the conversations around regionalization in your adjacent towns if that is possible for you. I think there is a savings there, and I think we also keep the talent that's there with the teachers, administrators, but it doesn't have to be 10 schools in one town if the population size is extremely low. So I would love to be able to look at that. We did put money in the budget to look at regionalization, to do a task force, to do a study on it, and I would love to be able to see the data around that.
Great, we're going to dive into that a little bit later in the discussion. Our friend from Garden State wanted to talk a little about regionalization, but I'll get your thoughts on school funding or something.
Yeah, I could fix it right now. Let's take students, teachers out of it. Let's take all that out of it. Let's take the curriculum out of it. let's let the state pay for, we talked about special education. Let's let the state deal with transportation, again, without punishing schools that already have it. Let's let the state deal with HVAC systems since COVID. Let's let the state deal with, with those that need access to online services and things. And number one, when people ask me what's the most important thing in education today, the most expensive thing and the most important thing is school security, right? Something we didn't deal with years ago. And the cost to just put in cameras or to put in in your lobby to make schools safer, to hire school resource officers or outside entities to do that job. If you take that all out of it, we wouldn't have any budgeting issues, okay? And that's the problem. What's happened over the years, our school districts are incurring the costs for these things that have nothing to do with teaching the children, as far as teaching in the classroom, nothing to do with the curriculum, and nothing to do with anything else. So I think if we get creative and we find ways to fund some of these issues, old school buildings that need HVAC systems because the air's not clean. I mean, to me, that's more important than anything my kid's gonna learn, right? To be safe and healthy within the school. And then from there, I mean, I can rattle off 10 other things, but these are things that take up the bulk of school budgets. And now you have schools in my district that can't afford courtesy busing. Kids have to walk to school. And I'm not talking high school kids, I'm talking elementary kids, really young kids having to walk to school because they lost courtesy busing. They've lost band programs, they've lost choir programs, sports, obviously, extracurriculars, and even tutoring programs because they don't have rides to and from the after-school programs. So we have to get creative and we have to do the tough work, but if we find a way to take that out of the funding issue, you're going to see very few funding issues.
Thank you, Assemblyman. And I want to hand the microphone over to my good friend